Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Slashing Admin Time and Increasing Productivity. So how our customers save 10 to 15 hours per week. And we think we've been conservative with the title. So thank you very much for joining us. We think you get some great tips and hints today. And of course, feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar. If you have anything, we have team members standing by to answer those questions. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to put them in the chat. So first of all, my name is Damien Adler. I'm the co-founder of PowerDiary and head of customer success. Very briefly, my background, I'm also a registered psychologist, which is how we got into this space. And the very, very brief backstory is that my wife and I started a private practice, private psychology practice many years ago. And we really realized that there weren't any good software solutions for running practices efficiently. So my brother, who had a strong technology background and was willing to jump in, and we co-founded PowerDiary, and we have grown it ever since. And it was instrumental in helping us grow our own practice, but we've had the fortunate opportunity now to, as PowerDiary has grown and has become, a program that is used all over the world, to really, have close-up experience at seeing practices run and to really be able to understand what makes practices run efficiently. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to my co-host, Fiona, to perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone, nice to be here. I am the head of strategy and marketing and growth with PowerDiary. But before that, I started my career in business consulting, and I'm still passionate about growing businesses and helping businesses succeed. Of course, that was a very different type of business, often some of the largest businesses in the country. But yeah, love getting involved, diving in, finding the problems, helping figure out the solutions. I subsequently went and studied my MBA, which, as you'll see later in this presentation, will become a little bit relevant. And yeah, I've built some technology businesses along with a couple of partners, and loving, being involved with PowerDiary and helping PowerDiary grow, but really helping our customers, the private practices and health businesses grow and, expand their impact on the communities that they're serving. So that's extremely brief rundown on me, but yeah, very pleased to be here. So let me just go to the next slide. Yeah. So what we're going to cover today, just as a very quick overview, is the impact of admin tasks on profit and productivity. And this is, the overarching sort of theme of this presentation. And we, because we think it is such an important topic to cover and topic to focus on for all practices. So some of the things within that are standardizing admin processes with written systems, and we'll go into some of that, tips for outsourcing and delegating, how to automate admin processes, and we're going to introduce you to this term of once-ifying your workflow, which we love that term, and Damien's going to talk more about that, and the benefits you can receive from reducing admin time. And it's not just that, we're sick of it and we don't want to do it. There's a lot more to it than that. So we're excited about this topic, and we're looking forward to, getting into it, the weeds with you. So first off, just as a sort of an overarching bracket to sort of put across everything, I guess we wanted to remind everyone that, these health practices that we're running, they are businesses, and they're very different, as I've said, to some of the large businesses that I've previously been consulting for. But at the same time, the fundamentals are exactly the same. When you boil it down, our profits are equal to come from our income less our expenses. Now, in the context of a health practice, usually the income sources are things like, your patient consultations and services, the assessments you might do, the report writing, you might be charging fees for that, telehealth services, group services, product sales, and maybe you've got some workshops or e-courses that you've made available to your clients. So things like that which generate your revenue. But on the other side is where we're focusing today, is the expenses. So typically, and this is not an exhaustive list by any means, but typically these will be made up primarily of things like clinician salaries, administration salaries, operating costs, rent, phone and internet, office supplies, advertising and marketing, and things like insurance. So, we really want to, in order to maximize our profit, and again, it's not because we're greedy and just that's our sole goal in life, but it enables us to do a lot more and to have much more impact and be a much more successful, sustainable business. So in order to do that, we need to keep control of the expense side of this equation so that we have a healthy practice that can continue for the long term.
Absolutely. I think, I think leaning on that too is you'll see in that list of things that one of the most significant expenses a practice has is actually the administration, and we can look at that, in terms of direct costs. So it may be, by the salaries that you're paying, when we list that as an expense, or it could be your own time, and we'll look at that a little bit sort of further as well. But when we look at those costs and what sort of things eats into profit, the admin is one of the, if you like, it's the lowest hanging fruit often, where we can make changes there and really make a difference to practices. So, what does a sustainable practice look like? For practice to sort of continue successfully, to grow if that is the goal, but also to be able to continue to provide services, it needs to make a consistent profit. It needs to be so that it's financially, self-sustaining and generating a profit and generating reward for the practice owners and for everyone involved. Clinicians need to be well supported by administrative processes, and we know that, and this will be no surprise to anyone in this audience, but that admin is one of the least liked or most disliked elements of not only running a practice, but of providing clinical services. So sustainability looks like having administration processes that really support practitioners and minimize the sort of impact for practitioners. Sustainable practices have the right people doing the right jobs so efficiently and effectively. And the example sort of where you can get like a mismatch with this is that, like, when we first started our practice, years ago, and we were nervous. We started practice. We had, we had taken some financial risk in setting it up. We had, had lost income by leaving, the jobs, that we had, and so we were doing, everything ourselves, and literally, from the cleaning to the answering phones, returning messages, getting flowers to put in the practice, every single thing that you can think of, we were doing. And what we discovered fairly quickly as the business grew, it just didn't make sense for us to continue to do that. So even though we could do it, and it felt like we were saving money, which very early on, okay, that it might make sense to do that just to test whether the practice is going to work, but very quickly you need to be sort of re-evaluating and checking, does it still make sense for the people doing the things that they are to be doing it. So I think it still made sense for us to do it at the very, very start, because we didn't really know where our time would be absorbed or how quickly we'd get clients to see. But as soon as that became evident that we were going to be short on clinical time, then we moved to really having other people do those things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit further on. So I won't go into it too much just yet. The other component is really around this sort of evolution, and just making sure that you are constantly kind of updating and thinking about the things that I'm doing, maybe they've always done, or maybe that the admin team have always done. Does it make sense? So when you look at the distribution of tasks, who's doing what, that constant sort of need to reevaluate and assess whether it still makes sense, because things change all the time as you grow, as your team become more experienced. Perhaps admin team members are showing increased capacity to do other things. It may not make sense to have them doing all the basic things that could either ideally be outsourced or automated, or it might be about bringing in a junior person that can do some of those things and better leverage the experienced people in your team if you have people showing potential. So it's that constant evolution, and no matter what the stage of your practice is that you have now, one of the things that we wanted you to kind of, or encourage you to think about, is just to have a sort of quick, self-audit after this about, does it make sense when you think about what things your admin or you might be doing yourself? Does it still make sense for where you are now? Okay, I'll hand back to you, Fiona, to talk about the productivity mindset of MBAs.
Yeah, well, this is something that we're very excited about, and this is how we want to sort of frame the rest of this presentation, because these are 4 productivity principles that came up time and time again when in all sort of courses within the MBA. And, obviously they relate to managing large businesses, which most MBAs are going to go and do, but equally they are just as relevant and important for small businesses. And when Damien and I sat down to talk about what are the very best health practices do right to run successful practices, these 4 principles kept coming up time and time again. So we're going to sort of break them down further, but basically we have, the build your playbook. So this is about creating standard ways of operating that are really deliberate and intentional, and most importantly, easily repeatable by you or anyone else in the practice. So really building out your playbook, as this is how we do things here. The leveraging other professionals, this is otherwise sort of known as delegating and outsourcing, and can sound a little bit like handing off, but instead we prefer to think about this as the concept of leverage, like really thinking about getting the right person to do the right job, and who is the best person given what stage we are in the organisation as well, and in our growth journey. So that's, leveraging other professionals. Automating is, setting things up to happen on their own without anyone's involvement, ideally. So, really thinking about what can we do? How can we leverage technology? How can we leverage other processes and, automation techniques to really get our practice happening, autonomously, really. Mm-hmm. And this concept of once-ifying. So this is about the concept of thinking about what one thing could you do that would make everything easier? What could you do once now that in the future will make the whole thing run smoother? Mm. So we're going to break all of these down further as we go on. But this is the framework that we're thinking about things, and all of our productivity and reducing admin can really fall into these buckets.
Yeah, I think the other thing, when to mention too here, when you're looking at large versus small businesses, is that, with large businesses, it takes, I think, a lot of time to implement changes. It often can be slow moving. There's lots of sort of people involved. And the impact is, there certainly can be a significant impact, but it takes time to kind of flow through. I think the exciting thing about working with small businesses, whether it's a solo practitioner or whether it's a business that's got 20 or so team members or something in it, so in that medium size, that it's easier to kind of implement, and the impact's actually bigger, because if you improve something, improve efficiency 10, 20%, 30%, and often a lot more than that, the impact for the individuals and for the business is actually a lot larger proportionally than it is often for bigger businesses, because there's a lot more, it's easier to do, and it's more immediate. It makes, I think, a bigger difference for individuals, within that. So it's really exciting applying those principles to, a different context.
Yeah, absolutely. You couldn't have said it better. Yeah. In a large business, often there might be a bit of, it's easier for certain things to hide and sort of to go undetected, whereas a small business, everything matters, and it matters a lot more. So it's super important. So let's get into it. So the first one we want to talk about is building your playbook. So, and this is the idea of really starting to think of your business as a franchise. So, obviously the most famous example of this is McDonald's, and that might not be the most inspiring for you, and it's quite different from running a health practice. I'll give you that. But, they are pretty admirable in the way that they've been able to roll out, a system that is repeated, so many thousands and thousands of times all throughout the world by really unskilled staff for the large part. But working towards running your business with repeatable processes that, create the outcome that you're working towards. So, think of your business as a system that produces outcomes, and those outcomes are the products, the services, the profits, but even things like the impact that they have on your clients or the way you want your clients to feel, that's an outcome. So if you think about that as the end in mind, what is the system that is going to get to that place? And your playbook is really the manual to your business system, or the operating manual. And you really want to capture everything, the experience and the learnings, to make your processes repeatable. And the inspiration, or one inspiration for this, is a really great book which we'd encourage you to read. I think we've referred to it previously, which is Michael E. Gerber's book, The E-Myth, which was the original, and there's actually the E-Myth Physician, which is even more relevant for health practices. But this book talks to this this practice particularly. And it's an area that we are so passionate about, that we a couple of years ago or so built a whole practice operating manual that is a feature built right into Power Diary. So this has the system for holding your practice operating manual, but also has hundreds of pre-written policies and processes that can be started off as a template but customized to each practice needs. So we really feel that every practice deserves to have an operating manual that works for them. And we can see the practices that use an operating manual or playbook just get so many benefits from that. So there's other ways you can do this without that particular tool, but yeah, it's something that we feel so passionately about. And just to go into ways we can build that playbook, maybe I'll hand over to you, Damien. You can talk more of the practicalities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other sort of reason to build these playbooks, that consistency of experience, but also, what happens if something happens to you, and that happens. We don't like to, think about that, but inevitably, that's life sometimes, that things, go wrong, or we're out of action for a while due to personal circumstances or illness and so forth. And by having a playbook, or it may not even just be you, I should say, like it could be an admin person that leaves suddenly, or it could be anything. But by having your sort of playbooks, you're able to, I guess, make your business more durable, and importantly, to be able to get that same experience that you want to give. You're able to sort of provide that in a way that's, durable if something happens, and also consistent, in a way that doesn't get the variability. If you have a change in admin person or something happens, someone else can come in, pick up those playbooks, and away they go. So things that, these are really looking at examples from from both our own, practices to sort of talk personally, but also that we see practices around the world do. And we look at the practices that are running in a really sustainable, way, whether they're small or large. These are common things that we'll see amongst them. So, batching tasks. So, having a day that is bank day, or a day that is, post office day, and, looking at trying to sort of clump things together, because often we know that when you switch tasks, there's an inefficiency in doing that. So batching them together, so you're doing all of that one task on the one day, is often better than doing a little bit of that every day. Creating schedules. So simple routines. So if there's cleaning to be done, if there's routine maintenance, even things like, believe it or not, watering plants, right? If you don't sort of coordinate that, you might end up with overwatered, underwatered, ultimately dead plants. And plus communication about, have you done that? No, I haven't. By actually just putting it into a schedule and saying, okay, Monday, whatever, is plant watering day. Someone's allocated to do it, even if it's you. Then that's done. You don't have to think about it for the rest of the week. Keeping a list of commonly used suppliers to simplify reordering. So again, instead of having to kind of hunt around and find, where do we buy our paper from, where do we buy different supplies, and having that kind of clearly listed. Even test kits and things, where do you buy, various things from, where do you reorder forms from? Having that listed means that either if it's you doing it, you can easily refer to that and you don't have to redo any of the research. But if you've got admin team members or other clinicians, then there's one central source of, okay, this is where we buy all our stuff from, and very easy to kind of find that. Playbooks around prioritizing essential services. And this is one that we were, really very sort of strict about, in that we would have a list of preferred suppliers for things like, electrician, plumber, graffiti removal. Unfortunately, our building used to get targeted by with graffiti fairly frequently, or initially it did anyway. And by having these services, one, it makes them easy to kind of call out. You have a relationship with them and get them called out. But we used to prioritize paying those bills immediately. Like literally as soon as that bill came in, we would make sure those bills got paid, because we wanted to be known as a customer that was very responsive to them and to their needs, getting paid, and in return they'd be responsive to us. And it might sound like a small thing, but they're often very small businesses themselves, and they really notice that they sent a bill and it got paid within a few hours. They would notice that, and next time you ring them with something urgent, bang, that person comes, and it just saves you so much hassle. You don't have to ring around, find new people, have a risk that they're no good, etc. Developing policies, so for your phone hours, making sure that's all clearly communicated. Policies for fees and payments, so you're not making up individual rules for individual circumstances. And so you streamline everything so that if there are questions about fees and payments, there's a standardized way that it gets done. You don't end up with an admin person giving a kind of uncertain answer to a customer. I'll have to get back to you. And then that person has to consult with you to find out, what happens in this circumstance. Get it very clear, communicate it everywhere, and then those things get taken care of. Things like receiving payments from large organizations, often their payment cycles can be very different. So they might pay on 90-day terms or something ridiculous from our point of view. But if that's the case, then making sure that your playbook, that when you're setting up contracts or deals with those companies, you have a playbook where you inquire as to what their invoice payment schedule is and factor in the cost of that outstanding debt that they have to you for services and build that into what you charge them. And so we absolutely, if a large organization we were working with would pay us on 60 days or 90 days, then they would pay a premium for that. We didn't say that that's what we were doing, but when we would factor in the cost of providing that service, the fact that we would have to carry the cost of providing the service and waiting before they would actually pay us, and all the admin involved with that, put a premium on top of that. And if that's part of your playbook, you don't get caught out when you're setting up a contract that you end up carrying this kind of debt. And then creating smart scheduling, so ensuring that you look at whether it's for yourself or whether it's working with each individual practitioner, having a playbook on their onboarding about where you ask and inquire as to what their preferred workflow is. So they like to do all their appointments close together with no breaks and do admin at the end, or do they like to break it up into chunks? And you'll find each practitioner has a different way in which they work most efficiently. And by, again, having that built into your playbook, that you ask them about those preferences, then that way all the scheduling can be done. It makes it a lot more efficient, and they're happier. So these are just sort of examples. And, again, like with everything we talk about today, we can't exhaustively go into every possibility, but just to kind of get you thinking about what playbooks could you have that would make things more efficient in your practice.
And of course, they're not set in stone either. They constantly need to evolve as the practice grows and changes, and you come up with better ways. So it's still good to have bedded down what you think is the best idea of operating at the moment, though.
Absolutely. And once it's there, you'll soon, and it's written out, you'll soon see what needs to be changed as time, because suddenly it won't quite fit anymore, and you'll update it. Okay, we're going to move on to section 2 now, which is about leveraging other professionals. And as Fiona was saying, this is really around the idea of delegating and outsourcing. So just to kind of get the thinking straight about this, I think the biggest mistake that we see the professionals make, and practices make, I should say, is the view that their own time is kind of free. And so they'll think, well, if I can do something myself, then, or even if I've, then I should, because it's free. And really, this, of course, is not the case. We don't have to think about it too hard to realize that, time is money, and there's an opportunity cost. It's about what else could you have been doing with that time. And so given that time is the most precious resource, we've got to think about sort of how we spend it, and not get lulled into any false economies of doing things really that are a low value task, that really could be done by someone else or could be automated. So, really, if you want to think about it, think about what tasks sort of take you away from seeing clients or doing other like high value jobs that you could do, or things that deliver value to your life. So it may not even be work, but what things sort of take away from stuff like family time that really maybe could be done by someone else. The next thing in terms of framing how we think about this is the idea that um, experts often can do things, even though we're paying them, can do things often a lot more efficiently than what we could. And administration is a great example in itself. That the For me, trying to do administrative tasks, answer phones and have lots of moving parts at the same time, my brain does not work well in that environment. So it would take me twice as long to try and do admin tasks as it would take a professional admin person that has a brain that does that well and enjoys doing it. So often experts, it might cost us to do it, but in fact the because of the efficiency, how quickly that they can do it, then they'll get it done a lot faster, and it stacks up that again, the idea of having the right person do the right thing. Bookkeeping is another great example. I could do the bookkeeping at our practice. My wife could also have the capacity to do it, intellectually understand it enough, but the time to do it, is so much slower than actually having a good bookkeeper and a good accountant. So much better that I do the things that I'm good at naturally and have other people do the things that they are good at. And the final point around this in terms of setting the kind of mindset is around evaluating your own and your staff's capacity. So often team members will have certain skills, certain we like to call them like superpowers that emerge, and it's fantastic all around if you can leverage those superpowers to have them focus on those things, because obviously you'll get it done well, but also for that team member, then they'll enjoy it much more, so it gives them a more rich experience. And sometimes it can be things like we've had running the practice, I've had admin team members go out and negotiate contracts, and it just turned out that they were actually really good at it, very personable, very low key in how they would do it, so they could actually have really good conversations and set up contracts that were really quite significant with large companies. And I would never have thought that they had that capacity until we started to see these skills kind of emerge, and thought, hey, let's give this a try and see. Okay, so some principles to follow here, Fiona, and I will hand it over to you to take us through those.
Yeah, I won't dwell on all of these because I think you've covered off some of them, especially the first one we've got here about we've all got limited physical and mental energy, so using that energy wisely. I think, yes, that couldn't be more important, but I think we've covered that already. And, the concept of your time is not free, and your hourly charge, what you charge clients, perhaps that should be some guidance as to how you're thinking about the value of your time. And that may vary depending on what stage you are in your practice, but at least it is, you don't want to be doing tasks that are worth $10 an hour when your bill rate is a lot higher. So yeah, if someone else can do the task better, faster, and perhaps enjoy it more, it's a great indication that you should be delegating it to them. And the goal really should be to spend the majority, the goal would be to spend all of your time doing what you're best at and what no one else can do. So that's an overarching goal. But number 5 here is something I do think is a stumbling block for a lot of us, and this is to be patient when delegating. I think a lot of us fall into the mistake of going, okay, well, I know I need to delegate. All right, I've got this task. I'm going to give it to, person X. You give it over, they don't do a great job, and then we go, oh, throw our hands up in the air. Nothing works. I have to do everything myself in order to get it done properly. But, that's probably not the fair way to do things. And, we need to all take a learning attitude ourselves. We need to learn how to delegate. That's a skill in itself. And of course, the other person needs to learn this particular task. So it's about finding that balance without, micromanaging, but, finding how to give enough instructions, enough support and guidance to really help that person succeed at that job. And oftentimes, even if they don't do it to the same standard that you might have, it's still worth having someone else do it. Obviously, that depends on what it is, but just be aware of that trap that a lot of us can fall into. And yeah, that last point, of course, is establishing guiding principles and process so that tasks can be successfully replicated. So that might be as simple as just writing a checklist out for something that needs doing. So, those types of things can be huge, so simple, but hugely impactful. And a couple more examples. Damien, did you want to talk to this?
Yeah, just very quickly. And really this is just to sort of prompt you to sort of think about what things that you can do. But marketing and advertising services is a good example where you can outsource that. I used to build our own website and all the rest of it for our practice years ago, and before we had a lot of team members and stuff at Power but in fact, even in the very early days of Power, in fact, I used to build the website, and it was an area that I had to sort of learn, but I was a lot slower at it. And then once we actually got people building that directly, then the quality was better. My time was spent better on other things. But things like property maintenance, bookkeeping, I talked about, building, repainting, getting your windows clean, getting any other services, virtual reception services. Often the easiest way to think about this is just take a note for a week or so of what you spend your time doing, or what things need to be done that you haven't had time to do when are kind of on your mind, and just make a note of all those, and then go through and think, okay, what things do I really need to do myself, and what things can we get other professionals to do. So I won't spend any more too much time on that, other than just to get your thinking about those fired up, and then you can work out how to leverage other professionals more in your practice.
Excellent. So the next principle, that we wanted to talk about here was automating. So how to automate your practice, and this is really getting things happening without direct input from you or really anyone, putting them on set and forget, so for repetitive tasks. So it could be like arranging automatic deliveries with providers that you regularly order from, putting tasks on autopilot, creating systems or processes. But of course, utilising technology, your practice management software as efficiently as possible as well. One analogy I like to think about is, it sounds a little bit strange, but is garbage collection. Can you imagine what would happen if we all thought, oh, well, I'll just save the fees on my rates. I won't pay for garbage collection. I'll just take it to the tip or the rubbish collection service whenever it fills up. How much that would, well, one, how disgusting all of our places would end up being, and just how much overhead that would cost, and the mental headspace, oh, I've got to do that thing, and nagging of each other. Instead, most of us anyway have a weekly collection service. It just happens, and we don't have to think about it too much. So if you can think about what in my practice could run like that, I think we're on the right track. So I'll just jump forward. And yeah, some examples here, Dane. What have you found in your practice or talking to practices?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things, and we can sort of break it down. But things like deliveries, right? So we'd have flowers delivered every week. We like to have fresh flowers in the reception, so we'd have that delivered. But think about things like toilet paper. You can subscribe to a toilet paper service, and they send you a certain amount of toilet paper every whatever time frame you tick, and it arrives. The same thing with other things that might. If you're using, copying, printing, all that sort of stuff, you can actually just automate the delivery of those things, and they just turn up, and you don't have to they're small things, but they add up to efficiencies. You don't end up having to rush out and get it. You don't run out of these things, which then becomes a sort of, an urgent matter. And you don't have to, importantly, think about it anymore. Like, there is a flow of these things that arrive. You're going to use them, so they're coming anyway. But other stuff that you can do, things like laundry services, of course, cleaning services, alarm system maintenance, having things that we ended up with an arrangement with a painter, because we've been in our practice for 10 years or so, and we wanted to kind of repaint. And first time around, I actually, my wife and I painted, everything ourselves. But then we actually got this person on a schedule because we didn't want to shut the clinic down. Where they would come in after hours and they would paint a room at a time. And we had a fairly large practice, so it took a bit of time to do, but it all just sort of happened with minimal sort of disruption. We set it up once, and that person would just come in, every night and do a section, and we're able to automate it, not have to think about it, not have a big disruption. Things that people also sort of forget about are things like window cleaning, having any of the sort of just think of anything that you have to think about. Is probably the easiest way to put it. And anything you have to do, get it onto a schedule. And there are services for everything. And by the time you factor in the time that you save in not having to do it and think about it and run to office supplies and get things, the cost, it actually ends up more efficient than not. So you'd be surprised how much you can just get rid of. Now, in terms of practice management itself, and this is often where our sort of space is where we've really kind of focused on what are the things that we can automate to make practices run more smoothly. And so there are so many elements of running the day-to-day operation and the clinical part of running a practice, as well as all the administrative stuff that we can automate and take it sort of out of the person's need to think about it and out of the risk of things not getting done. So things like intake forms, with the online client portal. So you allow people to register and book, but you can also then trigger the intake form to be sent to the client. And then the next step that we did, in fact, when we released that, is we need that information to automatically populate, not just as a form that's completed, it's sitting in the client profile. Let's link a lot of the fields to the profile so that the information automatically populates into the practice management system, so then the person's got the complete profile sitting there. So things like that. Online bookings are amazing. Like some people have a little hesitation about allowing people to kind of book in, but you can control the schedule. You can control the rules about when people can book, if you allow them to cancel, how much lead time, what appointments, what services, all of that you can configure so that you're still maintaining control of your schedule. But so much efficiency can be gained by having clients actually manage the bookings themselves, and then they can do it even when your admin's not open, so you don't get there in the morning and have to clean up, get all the messages from answering service and clean up the diary or the calendar for the day. So yeah, amazing. Email, SMS communications and appointment confirmations, huge efficiencies there, so that everything is going out automatically. You can see who's confirmed or cancelled. Tracking session numbers, tracking the use of care plans, looking at making sure payments and everything are automated. So if people have outstanding invoices, you can set up the system to automatically send out a reminder and a link to pay that invoice, and you can set that up using our automations tool. You can set up recalls. So again, think about all the things that you end up kind of doing that you may be doing manually, or you or an admin person needs to sort of think about it, and look at how the system, hopefully you're using Powder because we focus on this, but if you're using something else, look at what automation functions that you have available, and make sure you maximize the use of what your practice management system provides, so you can get rid of these tasks. And it's a win for everyone. I mean, obviously win for the practice, win for the admin team, but also for clients, because ultimately things run more efficiently, it's more predictable, and it's a smoother experience for them. So huge upside to doing this.
I was going to say something like the online bookings, like clients love that because they can actually see all of the availability. They're not, and compare that to their own schedule. Then they could do that in one step rather than having to go back and forwards with someone on your team. So that they love it. And also the feedback we get from practices is even implementing just part of this, part of one thing here just gives so much more headspace, and just gives them so much more encouragement to go further with it. So I don't feel like you have to do everything at once, but start on this journey and see the difference it makes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and I remember actually reading I think it was a testimonial from a a customer or something that was saying that they'd sent in and they said something like that they woke up with a bad back or sore back in the middle of the night, and they wanted to book an appointment with their practitioner, and they were able to do that and get it sorted in the middle of the night and have that
Yeah.
appointment booked and see. They didn't have to kind of think about it and then get up and remember to do it, and we get so many of those sorts of stories that people work unusual hours, it doesn't line up with the admin team, get it sorted. Okay, let's move on to the fourth section. So this is once-ify. Now, once-ifying, and we're talking about once-ifying your practice. So it's really to design a process so that you only ever need it to do it once, right? And you don't end up kind of repeating. So once-ifying is like it's a mindset as well as an action, right? So it's about thinking about what do I end up doing over and over. So a couple of examples here that are broad, and then I'll go into a little more detail. But so training, instead of demonstrating multiple times how to do something, let's say you're onboarding a new admin person or you're onboarding a new practitioner, and you have to go through the induction with that person and show them, each new person that comes, you do the same process, right? So once-ifying is going, okay, well, I got to do that every time. So why don't I record it? Why don't I document it? Why don't I find a way that I can do it once, and then we can have that, we can utilize that over and over again. Okay. Another type of example is once-ifying even your thinking. Okay, so some things just take an annoying amount of time to do simple tasks if the wording right. And an example, for me, I remember every time I'd have to record the Christmas answering machine message, right, for the practice, and I'd have to think about like, what did we say? What did they say about if you have urgent, who they should contact? It would take an annoying amount of time to actually get that. And after a couple of years, I kind of wised up and went, I just need to write a script, right? And that way I can just read the script and change the dates each year. And that made such a difference, even though it might seem so minor. I have a script for each of the times that the clinic would be closed, for an unusual event like a holiday, and that just made it. I would sort of thank my earlier self each time. I would just go, oh, where's that document? There's the script. I'd record it. I'd move on. So, if we think about that, what can you do to kind of, once-ify, and to kind of get into a few more sort of examples here about once-ifying. So and we've covered some of these because it's sort of the mindset we've talked about, but creating those kind of checklists. What do you need to do when you open or close the practice? So if you're needing to train practitioners, having an opening and closing checklist makes it so much easier, because then they don't forget things, skip things. Cleaning, onboarding, concluding treatment with a client, any maintenance tasks, annual insurance checks, anything that you have to do on a repeated basis. Once-ify. Recording videos we've talked about, creating templates. So this is kind of like the templates and scripts for things. So if you need to write a letter to referral letters and discontinuation, closure letters, anything that you're going to have to do multiple times, then if you have to do it once, keep a record of it, store it in Powder if it's a template that SMS or email template that you can use, or a letter template, and then you don't have to think about it again. Same thing with finding services that we were talking about before. You do a lot of research to find an electrician or a plumber or whatever it might be. If you find one, get an arrangement with them, document it in your practice manual ideally, and then that way it's done once. Forget about it. You don't have to keep revisiting it, and someone else can come in and do it. So if you're sick, if you're away, you're on holidays, or if you're growing and you don't, do those things anymore, someone else can step in. It's been once-ified, and your life is much freer. So I want to leave you all this once-ifying thought about what do you need, to once-ify. What can you do in your practice that you are thinking about or doing multiple times? Okay, then I'll hand over to you, Fiona, to talk about this. Well, in fact, I might do this, and then you can close out for us. We are near the end.
Sure.
Okay, so what do you do with all your free time? Okay, so
big one.
the big worry, right? So when you once-ify, when you delegate, when you have your playbooks, the ultimate goal here is that you're freeing up time and you're freeing up resources. So that's going to flow through, of course, in terms of profit, because we were talking about at the start by reducing that. But it can also flow through in other ways. So we're just going to sort of go through a few things to kind of get you thinking about this. Now, the first thing is that if you've got admin team members and you increase the efficiency of how your practice is operating, what it means for the admin team members is that they can do more value add tasks, so things that better utilize their skills, and they often have enormous range of skills that they can apply in different ways to your practice. So it's not necessarily about reducing admin hours. That might be something, or you might be able to grow and not need to add as many admins. So there is a potential to do that. But very often, if you've got great people in your team, you're not looking necessarily at reducing hours, you're looking at better utilizing those great people to do things that add more value, support the goals that you have with the practice. So it's good for the practice, great for them as well. They're doing more interesting things. You can do things like generate more revenue, for your practice. You can write the blog articles or write the book, or write the course you've always wanted to write. You can do, maybe spend more time with your practitioners doing performance management or setting up some of these automation sort of things. You can do more debt collection if you need to, do more outreach. There's so many different ways that you can take that time and apply it to improve things for you professionally. But also, and you'll see the final point we have on this slide, is really around, you don't necessarily have to convert that time into something that is productive from a work point of view. Sometimes we get so caught up in work that we kind of forget that, life's about much more than that. And so that kind of family time, focusing on your health, sleeping in, binge watch a series, whatever it is that kind of gives you a better balance and ultimately leads to a more sustainable, happy and profitable practice and your own sense of kind of personal fulfillment. So just some suggestions. I'm sure you have lots of other things you can think of that you can do with your free time, but it's really rewarding watching our customers and our clients over the years as they make their health practices more efficient, and hopefully we've got a big part in that and supporting them and do that, and then you see the difference, and when they write testimonials and things and that tell us how the impact it made is amazing. And with that, I will hand over to you, Fiona.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last thing anyone needs, the last thing you need, the last thing especially your clients need, is for the health practitioners, to be burning out. So having a manageable workload that is sustainable for the long term is so important. So that's what we put here. Sustainability is number one at Power Diary. And we're a software that helps you run your practice much more efficiently and effectively. But our vision is really behind that, which is to provide the ultimate system that makes running health practices easier, simpler, and more rewarding. And, we've built a lot of these productivity practice principles into Power Diary as a product, and what we've got up here on the screen are some of the things our different customers have said about us, and we're not going to, read all of those out. You can have a quick look through those, but, it's so rewarding for us to see that we're saving them, 2 hours a day, I can see on one of them, or all the time that they're saving, and how that's enabling them to do more and more, either in their practice or to just take that time outside of their practice and have a more sustainable life, and sort of be therefore servicing their community perhaps for longer and more efficiently and effectively. So, the big goal is long-term sustainability, success, and impact for these practices. So that's where all of this is coming from. And so again, we're not sort of all looking to reduce admin just because we don't perhaps like it as much or anything like that. It's the smart thing to do. It's the thing that it's our responsibility to get better and better at doing this, and to get better and better at running our practices efficiently and effectively and sustainably. So I won't dwell on that too much or any longer, but yeah, that brings us to the close of our webinar, where we hope you've found this useful and perhaps have gained some ideas or insights or different ways of thinking about your practice. You know, Damien and I are very passionate about this topic and about helping practices succeed and become more and more sustainable. So, you know, there's lots of different ways of reaching out to us, which are on this screen here. You know, the primary one at the top is our email address or the live chat that we have. So you can start that from your account or emails from anywhere. We've got a ton of resources on our website, like some of the templates and things that we've talked about, policies, you know, no-show policies, all kinds of different things. We can help with a lot of that. And, you know, you're always welcome to book a one-on-one support call by video or phone if you need that. And you can also see where we're going, what's coming up next with our software through our roadmap, which is, linked there as well. So you'll have that available to you shortly after this. But no, thank you everyone for attending. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.